supremacy right now. And we skip away of the violence of white supremacy because we talk about the township, we talk about poverty as things that are it's just irrelevant. That lady's story is so powerful because it's the story of my mother, it's my story, it's the story of every black person in this room who has been dispossessed, who lives under violence every day in this country. So I'm sorry, Sarah, I don't want you to live in ways that you want to give back the land, because I want to take back the land, because for me, psychologically, it's very important that I take back the land. You don't give it back to me because it was taken back forcefully under colonialism. So I want to decolonize this country. And maybe if it means that an army of black people in this country take arms in order to do that, then maybe it needs to happen. But I'm tired of these debates. I'm tired of these debates.
When you've taken the land back, make sure you give it to the rightful owners in terms of the truth. Give it to the Khoi and the San people there. Yes! They are the rightful owners. If you want to take back the land, give it to the rightful owners. But you see, the problem is black people are the rightful owners. Where did they get the land?
Is that what you're saying?
No. History is much more complicated than that. Much more complicated. And we can go and have a look at that. But it's a myth. It's a myth to just claim that everything belonged to this, nothing belonged to that. It's a myth. If people start talking about war, we are in a very, very dangerous situation. It's very easy to incite violence. You don't know what you're talking about now, but suggest that we all move away from that.
Wait a second. Hold on a second.
And luckily I know that the majority of people in this country from different communities are not interested in violence. They are not interested in conflict and war. Those are side elements that should not be allowed to destroy the fabric of social cohesion in this country.
All right.
I think for me, I'm not obsessed with whiteness. I'm obsessed with black liberation. And I'm obsessed with the rebuilding of black humanity in this country. So to read my obsession with black liberation as an obsession with whiteness, I think is incorrect, because we live in a society that is very dishonest about the kind of power, the kind of brutality that white bodies, even without doing anything, hold. And so for PJ Powers to come and sing a very mediocre song and make money over the years about using Zulu culture and using cultural appropriation is exact kinds of power that white people hold in this space. And there's a generation of young people who are sitting, some of them sitting in this audience, who are moving away from the lies of Mandela to say, actually, we want the land at this point in time.
Woo! Good child. Peter, I'll give you the honor of replying. Yeah.
With regards to Jabulani, in 1982, it was probably before you were born, I went into Soweto with a rock song called You're So Good to Me. It didn't have a black note on it. I think some older people may remember it. It was You're So Good to Me. It was a rock song that suddenly charted on the Radio Zulu charts. So if you think that I adapted black culture, that is not the case at all. In fact, the black people put me on their wings, okay, and carried me, and have ever since. It is something I'm incredibly proud and grateful for. And it hurts me to see somebody that I have fought for my entire life, okay, in my own way, in what I can do. I'm not a politician, I'm not a statistician, I can't do any of those things. What I can do is talk out about whinging whites that we have in this country. And I will always have loved and always will love this country. The book that I've written is dedicated to the people of Soweto.
All right.
There you have it.
I call you a rainbowist. I think we all used to be rainbowists at some point or other. At the start of our democracy.
Yes.
But a lot's changed. A lot has happened.
The question is
Are
why?
your ideas still relevant?
Absolutely, because the Constitution is still relevant, whether we like it or not. And we all remember what it was like in 1994 and the whole concept of the Rainbow Nation. Why do we have this debate today? What changed? I believe that leaders should set the tone. And President Mandela and other leaders at the time set a certain tone in terms of why and how we should take South Africa forward.
All right. Rebecca, are all white people racist?
100%. How can you be a white South African and not be racist? And I don't mean that in the way of you necessarily consciously think that black people are inferior. I mean that there is just no way that you could have been born into this society without internalizing racist assumptions. But let's not make that the end of the conversation. It's not racist, it's just a fact. Let's not make that the end of the conversation. Let's say, yes, sure, we are all racist, and what are we going to do about it? Let's move on. Let's not make that the final insult.
Monique, do you agree with Rebecca saying 100%?
No,
All white people are
totally
racist.
disagree with what she's saying. I think that whiteness and white privilege has become this buzzword that you hear all the time. But actually, it's a way to silence anyone that is not of color. What she was basically saying is, if you are a white person, you are racist just because you are white, without any evidence. I am not a racist person. I respect all people. I respect black people, white people, colored people. So I feel it's very offensive to say that all white people are racist. It's just not true. And I think that to make whiteness the enemy is easier to fight than to fight the crippling corruption, to fight unemployment, to fight, to fight the wealth gap, because the political leaders that we have cannot fight that stuff. They don't have the skills to fight that, and then they make race the problem.
Ooh, Sarah.
Sorry.
You look like you totally disagree here.
I do totally disagree. I think that I'm a little bit torn because I really want to reply to a bit of what Monique has said, but I also really don't want this conversation where we have a potential to disrupt whiteness to be centered around the type of whiteness that is displaying the racism that you say that you aren't. I mean, the comment about people not having skills is inherently racist.
Yeah.
Just to point out one thing. I think we should have a conversation about how to give back the land. I think that's what we should do.
Do you agree with Monique?
Well, I think that what we need to look at is an element of complicity, Mr. Chaba. And I think that fundamentally what we haven't unpacked, we've gone through the TRC process, and what we haven't understood is how white people have benefited firstly from apartheid, and secondly how a particular group of white people in this country have become fabulously rich off the back of apartheid. Now, I think that white complicity, overall, we can look at, and the responsibility to promote social justice in our country, firstly. But when we have two families, there are two families in this country, the Oppenheimers and the Ruperts, names we don't necessarily all know, who have as much wealth as 50% of our people. It's an extraordinary crime. We should call it nothing else. That must be challenged. It's a crime against our humanity, and it's the humanity of 50 million people in this country. That's precisely where we need to focus at and say, how did you make your money during apartheid? How did you build those networks? And how do you retain and entrench your power in the last 20 years? And quite clearly, no one is disrupting that power fundamentally.
All right, Lovelyn.
I think what Elisa was trying to raise earlier about, PJ's song, yes, struggle hero, or you fought and whatever. I think the problem is that we forget that white people today have the option of tapping out, right? So you can sing Jabulani and you can dance, but then you can also remove yourself from the lived experiences of the culture that you're trying. I'm sorry, I'm speaking. From the culture that you're trying to represent. That doesn't make you a bad person. It's just the truth of the situation. And I think in South Africa, this is really what the conversation needs to be about. We need to talk about, why did apartheid end? Why did colonialism end? It didn't end because people's perspectives and behavior changed. It ended because it was expensive. It ended because white people couldn't travel anymore. It ended because they couldn't go and play sport, because entertainment for white people was over. Therefore, they needed to bring equality. That's not, we need to be honest. We must be honest about this. So for me, when we want to have this conversation, it's easy to say, let's talk about the Rainbow Nation. Of course, you can look forward if your life was never tainted by the experience of apartheid. Of course, you can look forward. It's not the same. And that's the experience of being black, constantly having to reconcile your existence, reconcile your humanity, and demand respect and demand a level of humanity as opposed to what other people just get automatically by being white. That's the reality. You don't have to label it as racism if you don't want to, but it is what it is.
All right. We do also have to think about what whiteness means. Is it about skin color? Mbeki, Ndate, you have said that perhaps we need to target the black elite. What are your thoughts so far?
Well, there was a comment about Oppenheimer and Rupert, but what about Patrice Motsepe? He's a multi-billionaire. So why aren't you mentioning him? What about Cyril Ramaphosa? That's another multi-billionaire in this country. What we're talking here, black liberation. Black liberation, we achieved black liberation in 1994. Okay, you may not
well,
like
it's not
it.
felt in this
you
room.
You may think you got nothing out of it, but we have a class of black people here who are multi.
As we should have.
Yes,
it is their country. We should have rich black people.
I'm not saying you shouldn't have them. I say we don't have. Blacks are not oppressed by anyone in South Africa.
Wow.
If they are, tell me who's oppressing them. If they are oppressed,
so if
who
we
is
are
oppressing them?
if we are oppressed, Wanelisa, who is oppressing us?
I think I hear what you're saying because, you know, you writing your books and the political elite in the ANC are not oppressed because you are doing the oppressing at the moment along with white. You are the gatekeeper of whiteness. You represent the gatekeeper of whiteness. Yes. And you sold us out. You sold us out. And to say that you fought for my freedom, you didn't fight for anything because I'm not free at the moment.
I merely said I did what I could. And one other thing, do you think for a second, I as a white person do not agree with both you and you? Have you ever thought that maybe I agree with you?
I don't care. I don't care. At this point in time, white feelings, white opinions don't matter to me because I need the land.
Ladies,
I need the land.
Because I need us to think about all of us. I'd love to come to you, Tiens.
It is unacceptable that inequality is so high in our country. A Gini coefficient of 65% is the second highest in the world, if not the highest in the world. The question I think we should ask is, how can that be changed? Now, there are people here saying, give us the land, then that will change. That may be. I want to say, what is the biggest empowering mechanism in any government's hands, in any nation's hands? No, it's education. What I'm perplexed about is that instead of holding a democratically elected government accountable after 22 years, what do we focus on? On 10 million or 10% people in the country.
The 10% who own the majority of the wealth.
Not all of them.
You own the
So
government.
you know, we can say, city of the land, I've got the Constitution here. Yes, let's work with the Constitution and the National Development Plan and go forward. We shouldn't. We should hold this government and all the political parties accountable.
What about rich black people?
Yes.
So who mistreat other black people, like Kulubuse Zuma, who's now been forced by the courts to pay his 5,300 workers. What about him?
In South Africa, it happens to be that the majority of white South Africans, just by virtue of their existence and the access to assets and everything that they have, are very much the huge culprits in this conversation.
No,
it doesn't mean, I'm sorry, it doesn't mean, right? It doesn't mean that there are black people that are doing things that are wrong. But why is that the immediate equal of it in the conversation? Will we then acknowledge that the entire apartheid machinery was also corrupt and that you know that it was affirmative action for white people?
Yeah. All right, Henny, you've actually documented how white fortune was made. Tell me about that.
Yeah. Well, Mr. Chaba, I think firstly, we need to appreciate our country was at war, right? And our country was at war for decades. And the last 10 or 15 years of that war saw all manner of crimes. In order for the apartheid regime to be able to buy weapons, to buy oil, for large corporations to move their cash offshore, they broke all the rules in the book and made a network of people around the world incredibly wealthy out of that process and people in our country. So I think for us as a nation, again, to move forward, we need a full understanding. For there to be true justice in our country, there has to be truth. And I think when it comes to economic justice, this is a crucial element that must be the focus of us moving forward.
All right. Welcome back again, brothers and sisters, kings and queens. Most importantly, if you came across the particular work, you're very special. Now, until this particular end, because all the way from the beginning up to this very end, we've been together, me and you, listening. South Africans need to carry on. These people are fine. It's a rainbow kind of a thing. It's very obvious. Look at those colors. They're a rainbow. In fact, they're mixed up. And if these people, they can sit and talk and listen to each other's nonsense, they're able to tolerate each other. You realize that there is only one moderator over there, but they're holding up to their tempers. I feel like there is, yeah, at least there's a good starting point. South African, kudos for that. You're greatly doing great. And of course, we would wish that we see that, there is that particular finding place of Africans and South Africans at large, that this is their home, not up to a very point, to a point whereby now when things go totally south, others, they have an option, like the whites. Let me say this one plainly, forgive me, but I'm going to say this one here. The whites, they say, for example, post with an option that they've got maybe lands back home. There's some investments in case things go haywire here in South Africa. They're able to pack up their things and move and leave the country burning. But unless they are sharing that particular cultural identity, that they are rooted, that they feel that particular honest, blending, that this is home, then, and that when, let's say, for example, there's an attack of South Africa, they are part and parcel, that they're able to defend that particular country, not just because they want to exhaust or manipulate and use the mineral resources, and once it's done, then they're done. That is something that maybe my worry is bestowed on, even as the lady who, at last winded up with the statements that, you see, yeah, this can only work. The truth is that, where is that Ubuntuism, that in as much as that they're trying to claim Jubilani, that particular lady musician over there, and her music being, in the charts, in the Zulu, in South African charts, but the truth is that there is one thing which is disconnecting her from the true authenticity of being a South African, and something that the truth that was shared by the other lady there, that I could attach maybe some authenticity and some tracebacks to maybe her origin in South Africa, maybe to some indigenous, ethnic clan or maybe ethnic groupings in South Africa. But then I would just say that unless that particular ancestry can be able to be traced back, that is, if this particular word, the Jubilani lady, is able to, or she would be able to say that she's an African and prove that she's really, really of this particular, land, then we are. It's that the reality is would be far fetched. But again, it's good that it's a starting point for South Africans, that they are able to lay out the clear information, sentiments, perspective, viewpoints on who they think they are, what part do they, possess. Like which part do they own? Maybe how much are they into South Africa? And that clearly, if it's really clearly placed, then everybody knows their place. Then the rainbow kind of a nation will be realized, and people will live nicely and with a perpetual unity and perpetual kind of doing things, and the economy that is going to be shared around with all the South Africans in that particular context. Now, having said that, in this particular platform, guys, we do share about Africa, thoughts, Africa to the world, what Africa is and what it means to the world out there, where it has failed, and how its leaders have put it in its status quo, where it has never moved forward, and what exactly needs to be done. And if you happen to jump across this particular channel, or if you are an adamant, or that those particular followers among them are returning followers, it will be good that we create this particular rapport. You never know where this thing is heading us to. And again, we're going to have a platform where we're going to be largely interacting, because it doesn't just have to be me trying to share maybe some videos from an archive, left there in the shelf, trying to remind ourselves who we are, where we've come from, when did the rain started beating us. We can always also be, formulating and also agenda setting the way forward for the Africans, trying to remind the world where Africa is. So do let me know that on the comment section, of what exactly you think needs to be done. How best can we improve this particular channel so that we're able to reach out the larger audience out there, especially those ones that these matters are affecting. Most importantly, the Africans in the diaspora. My plea has always been to you guys out there. Africa is home and you gotta do something about it. There is no time that you'll be, let's say for example, forgive me, but let me just say this is brutal honesty. It's a brutal reality that you can never, you're from Africa, you'll always be identified as an African. Even if you have the passports, you've got everything, you're a citizen, you do all the manners. It's just like another good citizen who's following their, the rules. But above all, that cognition you won't be given as that it is home. Yeah. And that is the real is only that they will not be able to maybe say that on plainly that, hey, you're home, this is your home, this is where you belong. But Africa is a place that we really need to develop so that is the world can also accord us the respect that Africa deserves. So guys, I'm going to pause it at this particular very end, and until we meet in the next upload, stay tuned. See you then.